in our headlines on this Friday, November 7th, here in South Korea. North Korea launches a ballistic missile earlier this afternoon toward the East Sea, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, marking its 7th missile test this year. A tower collapses at a decommissioned thermal power plant in the city of Ulsan, and authorities say at least 3 people have been killed, but that number is likely to rise. Meanwhile, in the U.S., Donald Trump is planning to devise a, quote, Game 2 plan to keep his tariff campaign on track, as a majority of Supreme Court justices share skepticism over his resort to emergency powers to place tariffs on imports into the American market. North Korea launched a ballistic missile toward the East Sea earlier on this Friday. The launch follows the regime's accusations of continued U.S. hostility as Washington sought fresh sanctions against Pyongyang earlier this week. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young has the latest.
North Korea fired a ballistic missile towards the East Sea on Friday, around 2 weeks after its previous provocation. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the launch was detected at 12:35 p.m. from the Daeguan area in Pyeongan-buk-do province, traveling about 700 kilometers. South Korea and the United States are conducting a detailed analysis to determine the missile's exact model and capabilities. The Allies' intelligence authorities identified signs of launch preparation in advance. Seoul's military says the missile was detected and tracked immediately, and Seoul also shared information in real time with Washington and Tokyo. This marks North Korea's 7th ballistic missile launch this year, and the 2nd since President Lee Jae-myung took office. The North regime previously fired a missile just 16 days ago, before US President Donald Trump's visit to the peninsula to attend the APEC meeting in Gyeongju City. Friday's launch follows Washington's strengthened sanctions aimed at North Korea's overseas revenue networks. The US Treasury Department on Tuesday imposed sanctions on 8 North Korean nationals and 2 institutions accused of moving funds generated through state-led cyber operations. This includes cryptocurrency theft and schemes to plant North Korean IT workers remotely in US companies. The State Department also started a process to place United Nations sanctions on 7 foreign-flagged vessels suspected of transporting North Korean coal and iron ore to China in violation of Security Council resolutions. Coal exports are widely identified as a key source of foreign currency for Pyongyang despite the ban. North Korea issued a response shortly after the sanctions were announced. Pyongyang's Vice Foreign Minister for U.S. Affairs, Kim In-cho, was quoted by state media condemning Washington's measures as hostile pressure and warned that the North would take corresponding measures. However, Seoul's Ministry of Unification said Thursday that the North's reaction appeared restrained, noting that the message was delivered via Vice Minister rather than by regime leader Kim Jong-un or senior party leadership. An official told the press that Pyongyang often aligns political statements and military activity to externally signal its resolve while maintaining cohesion at home. The South Korean military says it's maintaining a firm combined defense readiness posture and has the capability to respond overwhelmingly to any North Korean provocation. President Lee Jae-myung's National Security Council convened to review Seoul's response posture. The government urged North Korea to stop actions that threaten peace on the Korean peninsula, noting that the launch of a ballistic missile constitutes a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Also in Pyongyang, back on Wednesday, North Korean military officials and their Russian counterparts met for talks on bolstering cooperation and exchanges to promote their strategic alliance. According to North Korea's state-run media on this Friday, the meeting took place between members of the Korean People's Army General Political Bureau and those from Russia's main military political directorate. Meanwhile, in the South Korean city of Ulsan, a tower caved in during deconstruction work at a decommissioned power plant. At least 3 workers have been confirmed dead. Our Cha Yun-kyung has more.
As of 2 p.m. Friday, firefighting officials said 3 workers have been confirmed dead, 2 are presumed to be dead, and 2 others remain missing in the fatal collapse of a boiler tower in the southeastern city of Ulsan. The 60-meter tower at Korea East-West Power's Ulsan thermal power plant collapsed during scheduled demolition work on Thursday afternoon, trapping 9 workers at the site. A worker in his 60s, rescued at 9:06 a.m. Friday, was confirmed dead after being moved to a hospital, while another in his 50s, rescued at 11:15 a.m. this morning, was confirmed dead by staff at an on-site emergency medical facility before being moved to the hospital. The third fatality. A worker found trapped between the structure and the ground on Thursday went into cardiac arrest during a rescue attempt and was pronounced dead at 4:53 a.m. Friday. Progress at the collapse site has now been slowed to a near standstill. The entry route is blocked by a dense wall of twisted rebar and steel, forcing crews to dig through more than 30 meters of debris just to reach the collapse point. Rescue teams temporarily withdrew due to the heightened risk of a secondary collapse. Nearby boiler towers, units 4 and 6, have also been determined to be unstable, prompting the authorities to delay planned stabilization work.
Even during stabilization work, secondary accidents could occur, so that part has been put on hold. We decided in our situation assessment meeting that we will first conduct a thorough search and then move on to stabilization or find another method.
Speed matters, but the rescue has to be carried out safely, combining swift action with cautious dismantling.
The National Fire Agency is continuing to search for the missing, deploying a crane and rescue dogs after President Lee Jae-myung instructed officials to use all available personnel and equipment to save lives. Cha Young-kyung, Arirang News.
On the trade front, exports of K-food products have been soaring, and findings for the first 10 months of this year show an almost 6% expansion on year, driven by demand in the Middle East. Our business correspondent Park Chun-han has the numbers.
South Korea's K-Food Plus exports, which combine agricultural products and agro-industrial goods, recorded their highest ever export value from January through October, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. The total export value for the period hit $11.24 billion, around 16.3 trillion Korean won, a notable increase of 5.7% from the same period last year, driven by strong global demand for Korean food products. By region, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries saw the highest increase, with exports reaching $339.8 million, a 20.4% rise from a year earlier. The European Union plus UK followed closely, with exports to these countries rising 14.8%. Exports to North America climbed 13.9%. Especially from July through October, Gulf Cooperation Council countries saw a whopping 23.5% increase in exports, compared to just a 0.6% increase in the U.S. Food items such as ice cream, beverages, and sauces drove the strong export growth. The Agriculture Ministry earlier this year said it plans to reach $14 billion worth of overseas shipments by the end of the year. With just November and December left, $2.76 billion worth of K-Food Plus shipments need to be made to reach this goal. The ministry said it will step up policy support for export companies by expanding financial assistance, easing export bottlenecks such as logistics and customs procedures, and promoting K-food sales through global marketing initiatives tied to Hanyu, or the Korean Wave. Park Chun-han, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., President Donald Trump has spoken of the need for a potential second plan to keep his tariffs on track. This intention follows news that a majority of Supreme Court justices have shed skepticism over the legality of his tariff policy. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
The U.S. Supreme Court is weighing the legality of U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, a case that could have major consequences for both the U.S. economy and global trade. During a hearing on Wednesday, both conservative and liberal justices raised doubts about whether a 1977 emergency powers law gave Trump the authority to impose broader tariffs or whether he overstepped Congress's powers. The case is seen as a key test of presidential authority in trade policy. In response, President Trump said Thursday he will consider alternatives if the court rules against his administration.
We thought we did very well yesterday. We hope that we did. I think it would be devastating for our country, but I also think that we'll have to develop a Game 2 plan. We'll see what happens. Most people tell me we did very well.
He added that any alternative approach would likely take longer to implement. If the court finds Trump's tariffs unlawful, the government may have to refund some of the duties collected from businesses. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said in an interview with Fox News on Thursday that specific plaintiffs could receive refunds and that the government would need to work with the courts to determine repayment schedules. Greer estimated that the total amount at stake exceeds $100 billion and could approach $200 billion, though no exact figure has been confirmed. The ruling, expected in the coming months, will not only shape the scope of presidential powers, but could also affect U.S. trade relations around the world. 이승재, 아리랑 뉴스.
President Jae-myung has pledged to foster an environment where failure by researchers is embraced as a step toward success. To take a listen.
그 실패가 또 쌓여서 성공의 자산이 되는 거죠. 그래서 실패를 용인하는 그런 제대로 된 연구 개발을 할 수 있는 환경을 만들자. 그래야 나라가 흥할 수 있겠다.
The remarks were shared on this Friday during a televised debate among government officials, relevant researchers and young scholars aimed at sharpening South Korea's competitive edge in science and technology. On their agenda were the creation of dedicated funds and the provision of incentives for those who've experienced failure. The talks come as the government has set aside a record 35.3 trillion won, or some $24.2 billion for R&D in its budget proposal for the year 2026. In other news, Typhoon Kalmaegi has taken the lives of some 200 people in the Philippines and at least 5 in Vietnam as it heads west to Cambodia. Our Ian Jin covers the calamity thus far.
Typhoon Kalmaegi, after leaving the Philippines in ruins, moved on to lash through Vietnam late Thursday evening and into Friday. Having already been battling floods and record rains for the past week, Vietnam was hit by fierce winds of close to 150 kilometers per hour. The Disaster Management Agency in Vietnam reported at least 5 deaths on Friday, as well as 7 people injured and around 2,800 homes damaged. Areas in central Vietnam reported damaged buildings, submerged central roads, and fallen trees, while about 1.3 million people are reportedly to be without electricity. This Vietnamese rice farmer expresses no relief from the continuous storms.
You can tell that life is hard for us here from this flooded rice paddy field. The water receded from our home, so we moved our furniture back. And 3 days later, a storm came again and brought heavy rain.
The Vietnamese authorities mobilized more than 260,000 soldiers on Friday for search and rescue operations. Some airports and expressways have been closed and hundreds of thousands evacuated. Typhoon Kalmaegi has since weakened to a tropical storm and moved into Cambodia, while Thailand is also bracing for the storm's impact as local officials warned of flash floods, landslides, and overflowing rivers. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, the death toll from Kalmaegi climbed to 188 on Friday. The 20th storm wave to slam the Philippine archipelago this year. This typhoon is so far the world's deadliest of 2025. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
It's been about a month since the Hague Adoption Convention that seeks to safeguard international adoptions has taken effect here in South Korea. That being said, our Park Onu recently sat down with one adoptee whose search for his birth parents here continues. To take a look.
Even after 5 decades, for some people, the search for their birth parents continues. 57-year-old Park Won-il, also known as Philip Peloshu, was sent to an orphanage in Korea just 3 days after birth and adopted at the age of 3. Although he says he grew up in a loving family in the U.S., Park said he sometimes faced difficulties.
I really didn't feel like I fit in. You know, Colorado at that time and even today, I think is is mostly Caucasian, you know, I kind of stood out like a sore thumb in that sense. So
that's why he always wondered about its roots and has tried every possible means to find them.
All the DNA tests that I can, and then the other thing is I try to collect all the documentation I can. Got these pictures from the adoption agency, and these were pictures of me, you know, that were presumably sent to my adoptive parents, so that they could, you know, identify the child that they were getting.
During his search, he's managed to gather bits and pieces of information about his birth, including his name, assumed birthday, and even an address in Seoul of the custodian who sent him to an orphanage. While some pieces of information about him gave him hope, he says in most cases it ultimately led to nothing.
You get some pieces of information, you start getting your hopes up, and then it turns out to not go anywhere. And that's why I feel like many times I'm on a roller coaster of emotions in terms of this search.
Fortunately, he hasn't been alone in this journey, as organizations like Ko-Root have been there alongside him, helping him find related documents and communicate in Korean, a language he doesn't speak. Ko-Root has also been working hard for decades to raise awareness and advocate for better laws protecting adoptees' rights, saying there's still much more that needs to be done.
Normally, when you visit a local office or access the internet, you can easily get a family relations certificate without anyone's permission. But that's not the case for them, as their information is often incomplete. That needs to be restored so that they can find them with just a single click.
As the government also announced last month that Korea has become a contracting party to the Hague Intercountry Adoption Convention, following an official apology for those who have suffered, more governmental support could follow. That comes as there are known to be around 170,000 people adopted abroad since the Korean War. But alongside these measures, Park says he wants to focus on continuing his search as he is getting older, as well as his biological parents. His final words, if he finally gets to meet them, were these.
You know, I've lived long enough that I recognize, you know, life works in mysterious ways, and I harbor no ill feelings or ill will towards whatever circumstance my birth parents might have been in that had them give me up for adoption. I want to kind of complete, you know, for my own completeness, to understand where I came from, and I hope that they're not afraid to come forward.
박건우, 아리랑 뉴스.
Meanwhile, lawmakers and stakeholders are exploring ways to promote K-Buddhism beyond national borders. At a policy seminar hosted by the Choge Order of Korean Buddhism and the Parliament's Culture Committee earlier on this Friday, participants, including lawmakers, monks and scholars, touched upon ways to enhance modern lifestyles through the practice of traditional Buddhist values. Chair of the Culture Committee, Kim Kyo-hung, also pledged budget support for a sustainable campaign to take K-Buddhism onto the international stage. Participants also called for government support for policies that advance the international exchange of culture. Meanwhile, on stage here in the capital city this weekend is a performance by the Seoul Metropolitan Dance Theatre that shares the shape of harmony between nature and tradition. Our Pyun Ye-young was there.
Dancers dressed in white chokuri shirts with vivid blue and red skirts move gracefully across the stage. Each gesture, down to the tips of their fingers, is deliberate. Their movements are like gentle ripples gliding across a still lake. This is Kyobangmu, the opening scene of Mimesis, a new work unveiled by the Seoul Metropolitan Dance Theatre at the Sejong M Theatre in Gwanghwamun. After the sold-out success of Ilmu, or One Dance, the troupe returns with Mimesis. It's a reflection on how nature breathes within Korea's traditional dances. The performance reinterprets 8 classic forms, all of which represent a different element of nature, such as the wind that blows through Hallangmu and the lightning that pierces the sky in Changgyemu, with its finale culminating in fire and light.
Our dances are a complete gift set of Korean tradition and folklore. As we explored the essence of each piece, we realized that the flow of nature is deeply embedded within our heritage, that every phenomenon we live with is mirrored in our traditional forms.
The dancers' modernized hanbok are also turning heads. A sheer, form-fitting togori accentuates the dancers' breathing and movement, while voluminous skirts restore the elegance of traditional silhouettes.
The most distinctive feature of traditional attire is the balance of a slim top and full bottom. I wanted to highlight that contrast to express both structure and vitality.
In each dance, unique accessories accentuate the dancers' movements. And a live orchestra of 9 musicians perform traditional Korean instruments, filling the stage with the deep resonance of Korean rhythm. The production also features star dancer Kim Woo-gun, known from Mnet's dance competition Stage Fighter, whose intense performances in the sword dance Changeonmu and finale Taepyeongmu bring a virtuoso solo performance to this ensemble masterpiece. The first run of Mimesis continues through Sunday at the Sejong M Theater. Hyunyoung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know around the globe. In the United States, Tesla shareholders have approved a record-breaking pay package for CEO Elon Musk worth nearly $1 trillion, the largest in corporate history. 75% of Tesla shareholders voted in favor of the deal at Thursday's annual meeting. The plan ties Musk's compensation to steep performance targets, including lifting Tesla's market value from the current $1.4 trillion to $8.5 trillion and deploying 1 million self-driving robotaxis. Supporters say Tesla can't afford to lose him, while critics call the scale of the deal unprecedented and risky. Musk celebrated on stage to loud applause, calling it, quote, a whole new book for Tesla's future. Tesla shares are up more than 60% in the past 6 months. As analysts say, Musk remains the company's biggest asset. In the United States, former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has announced she will not seek re-election, ending nearly 4 decades in Congress. Pelosi, aged 85, made the announcement on Thursday in a video message to her San Francisco constituents, calling her career, quote, the honor of a lifetime. Elected in 1987, she became the first and only woman to serve as Speaker of the U.S. House, leading Democrats through historic votes on health care, impeachments, and pandemic relief. Her decision follows a major political victory in California this week, where a redistricting measure she backed won by a wide margin. While former President Biden praised Pelosi as, quote, the best speaker in American history, President Trump called her, quote, evil and said he's glad Pelosi is retiring. Nancy Pelosi's final term will end next year. A new United Nations report warns this year is said to be one of the hottest ever recorded, pushing the planet deeper into climate crisis. The World Meteorological Organization said Thursday that 2023, 2024, and 2025 will rank as the hottest years in 176 years of records. Global temperatures so far are 1.42 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, with greenhouse gases at record highs. UN Chief Antonio Guterres called the failure to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, quote, a moral failure, warning of irreversible damage unless urgent action is taken. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Even though today's Ipdong, which is the beginning of winter on the traditional calendar, the temperatures were higher than yesterday. It was as mild as 20 degrees Celsius in Seoul, about 5 degrees above the average temperatures for this time of year. It will drop to 17 degrees tomorrow, still exceeding the average temperatures. Meanwhile, rain is forecast for eastern parts of Gangwon-do province until tomorrow afternoon. About 5 to 30 millimeters of rain is expected. Rain will spread to Chungcheongnam-do province and the south tomorrow. Rain will fall occasionally on Sunday throughout the country, except for eastern parts of Gangwon-do province. Most areas will start off in double digits tomorrow morning, with Seoul at 11 degrees, Gwangju at 12 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 18 degrees in Daejeon and Daegu, 21 degrees in Busan. Temperatures will start to rise again in the second half of next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.